Am I live on At Home with 4 Indies? I am in the house on my own. My husband, my technical guru husband, is out. So he showed me how to get on here with the help of Emma from Bookish earlier, and then had to leave me for London. So if anybody could put anything up to say, yes, Emma's joined. I'm here. I'm on. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Hey, I did it myself. Oh, I feel really grown up at 62. Right, well, it's 8 o'clock and I'm Denise Welch, and I'm going to have to keep doing this all the way through because I'm at that sort of middle stage, you know, where I can see distance all right. But this is so, anyway, well done, honestly, like my teacher. Thanks, Emma. Anyway, I'm going to just not be able to look at these for a little while because I'm saying hello to everybody. Hi, oh my God, Karen Young. Is that Karen Young? Karen Young? At home, so hello from the Northwest. Oh, hi, everybody. Oh, my goodness me. I want to start, but it's so difficult because everybody's saying hello. Hi, Sue Mason. I'm going to get started and just assume that I'm saying hello to you all, and then and I hope that you'll come at me with some questions in a bit. But anyway, here I am in my kitchen in the Northwest. Now, I got back from London from doing several interviews for my book and from doing Loose Women today live in London. And I live in Cheshire, my adopted home of Cheshire. Hello from the Northeast. And I got home and we'd been doing a topic on Loose Women, which was how to cope with chore dodgers. Now, my husband is an artist and he works very hard. My young son is an actor, so at the moment he isn't working very hard. But nevertheless, if I was to show you this side of my kitchen, it would be absolute chaos. And I'm not going to swear here because this is sort of like a posh book club thing. Book, then my Geordie came out there, book club. And thank you so much for saying you love my book. Anyway, there's dishes in the sink, but I've got me flowers there. And I've got me artificial plant in the back and trying desperately to make it. I've also got, if you hear a little whirring noise, as the actress said, I've got me #1 fan here because I am like sweaty Betty. I thought I might have been through the menopause now, but I'm not. Let me see, from Minnesota, USA. Oh my God, that's so amazing. I feel so grown up as well, having people from the USA. I'm from Knaresborough, Victoria. Anyway, listen, thank you so, so much. I am so honoured and flattered that you have chosen to join me tonight. So before we sort of throw it open for any questions, I would keep my glasses on, but then you can see I've got the ring light to try and make me look a little bit more bleached out. These are some great comments here. Okay, I'm going to concentrate now. This book, The Unwelcome Visitor, Depression and How I Survive It. It's called Depression and How I Survive It, not Depression and How to Survive It, because I have no medical knowledge whatsoever, no counselling experience professionally, and so I couldn't tell you how to survive it. But I can tell you how I survive it. And the aim is that if you can gain solace and you can relate to my story, then maybe that will be of some help. And I have been overwhelmed. The book only came out on Thursday. And I have been overwhelmed by the response to it, which in a way is heartwarming, but it's also, may I say, heartbreaking that so many people are still living in silence with this debilitating, crippling, isolating, sometimes terminal illness, and people still feel they don't have a voice. So I, for 30 years, have been speaking out about this illness, and I was one of the first people off of the telly to do so. And let me just tell you my background. So I'm from Whitley originally. My family now live over towards Corbridge, where Forum Books is. So hello to anybody from Corbridge listening. My dad's at Ebchester and my sister is in Headley on the hill. So it's a very, very special part of the world there, and they were all telling me how proud they are of what you've done with the bookshop. So I hope to pop in to see all of you at some point. Anyway, so I had, prior to having my first son, Matthew, when I was 31, and that was 31 years ago, I had no incidences of psychiatric illness, mental illness, anxiety, nothing. If I said I was depressed about something, I said it in the way that people flippantly use it, which is like, oh, I'm so depressed, the weather's so terrible. Oh, I'm so depressed, I didn't get that job. Oh, I'm so depressed. Also, people say they are depressed about this current situation. Now we are in a global pandemic, hopefully coming through it slowly. And I understand that doesn't lessen that depression, but that is also what I've had through this lockdown, which is an overwhelming feeling of being futile, a feeling of sadness, being overwhelmed by the horrors that we've been seeing around us. And but that isn't the same as, the same as clinical depression as an illness. So basically, 31 years ago, I had my son, Matthew. It was a long labour. I had him in a private hospital in London, which was a bit against mine and my then husband Tim Healy's politics, to be honest with you. I felt I should have been wonderfully looked after in the NHS, and I think I normally would have been, but long story, the hospital was undergoing a major crisis financially, and you know when you're pregnant, you think you're the only person ever to have a baby. These are some amazing comments. I'm going to be able to look at them all afterwards as well, and hopefully share this video if I'm allowed to. So I'm not being rude. I'm trying to just get the bulk of my story out, and then you'll be like, and then you can ask me some questions. So basically, long story short, very long labour, but out he came after 42 hours, and they didn't give me any pain relief or anything. They said they would, and they didn't, but never mind. Out he came, much wanted baby. So there was socially, economically, there was nothing in our way. I was a very healthy, happy, full of beans, blooming woman in pregnancy, the typical blooming woman. My skin was great, my hair was great. I loved my husband. We had a great marriage. We were looking forward to our first child being born, and we had some money in the bank, and all was good. So nobody during my pregnancy, some psychologists said afterwards they would have been able to spot it. I say they wouldn't. But anyway, and so I had him on April the 8th, 1989, and everything was fine. I was the only mum in the hospital who they said wasn't an anxious mum. I was feeding. He was kind of whinging a lot and stuff, but I didn't relate that at the time to not getting food. I wasn't the best breastfeeder in the world, I didn't feel, but I was trying and I really wanted to do it. So that was on the Saturday. On the Wednesday, I had not been an anxious mom, and we took him home. We lived in North London at the time. And I remember feeling, as we drove home, an increasing sense of unreality, a very surreal experience, as though I was outside looking in on my life, but I didn't feel depressed, I didn't feel anxious, and I kind of thought, well, I'm bound to feel odd. I've just had a baby. You know, you come to the hospital with nothing and you go home with a baby, so it's bound to be surreal. Anyway, we got home and I had the next day what I would think would be the baby blues, which 80% of women get, where you are incredibly emotional. And every single card that arrived, oh my God, you know, all of that going on. And I was well versed enough to not panic about that, because I felt this is the baby blues. Anyway, on the Thursday, my mum and dad, that was the Wednesday, the Thursday. My mum and dad were coming down from the northeast to see the baby, and all my life I had looked forward to my parents seeing my first child and their first grandchild. And oh, thank you, Faye. Says she hadn't heard of me, but she'll be getting me book. Oh, well, you have now. And so my mum and dad came down, and I just remember my mum burst into tears because she said, I knew I'd love your child, but I was unprepared for the overwhelming rush of love that I have felt for him. And I just remember thinking, I don't feel anything. And it was very odd. And anyway, I went through the motions. I'm an actress, so sometimes that stands me in good stead. And I went to bed that night and I had the first ever panic attack that I had ever had. And I can only describe this panic attack to those of you who haven't had one, is that if you're driving along in a car and somebody cuts you up and you think you're going to crash, your heart feels like it's going to come out of your body. And you pull over and you stop. And once the danger has gone and you realize you're not going to crash, you eventually calm down. Your heart slows down. You eventually take a deep breath and you're on your way again. This was like the moment of impact and it never going away. Every time Matty went, my heart would race. I must have averaged an hour's sleep that night. And when I woke up, the whole lactation process had stopped. So I had gone, to put it not too crudely, I had gone to bed with big boobs to feed my child, huge, and the whole lactation process went, and I had nothing. I had not one drop of milk in my boobs to feed my baby. Now, 30 years on, that would have set off major alarm bells as a huge, very rare hormonal turbulence, and help would have been sought. Then a midwife came around who I'd never met, and she said to me these words. She said, that's not good, is it? That normally only happens if a spouse or indeed the baby dies. So I suggest that you just, go out and buy some bottles. It's a shame because breast is best. Can you imagine, to someone who was on the verge? My mum was furious. Anyway, I don't want to dwell too long on this early chapter, but it's kind of important to know the origin of mine. Anyway, it was just an awful feeling, but I still wasn't what I would say depressed. Anyway, on the Friday, my mum said, let's take the baby out for a walk. And my husband and my dad had gone out to play golf. So that's how sort of okay I was appearing to be. And we went out to walk the baby in Crouch End in London. Now, this is an area where I had lived for 10 years. And we went to this cafe because I'd gone to drama school in that area, so I knew it very well. And we were sitting having a coffee, and I said to Mum, I just feel really weird, Mum. I feel as if I'm outside looking in, as if nothing's real. And my mum, who had been a psychiatric nurse in Prudhoe Mental Hospital, as they used to call it, many years before, said to me, you don't feel depressed, do you? And I said, no, I don't feel depressed. Mum was thinking, Anyway, we walked back and I popped into this shop to get some milk. And on the radio was the day, it was April the 15th, 1989. It was the day of the Hillsborough disaster. And I heard on the radio this horrendous story about 96 people dying at Hillsborough. And I came out and I told my mum. We walked back half a mile to the flat, and outside the flat, and I can remember all of this very lucidly, my mum asked me a question about the disaster, and I said to her, that was a dream. What? And she said, well, no, darling, you've just told me about it. And I went, Mum, that was a dream. Stop trying to make me think I'm going mad. Well, alarm bells went off in her head. We got into the house and two of my mates, Lester and Paul, were there. Now Lester and Paul were two friends of mine, a couple who I would have been so excited to see normally. And Lester would have taken the mickey out of me about the baby and, surely you're going out to a disco tonight or whatever. And I just remember thinking, I want you to go, I want you to go. And this blackness started from my feet and moved its way up. And my hands started to twist. I still get emotional about that because it was so horrible. Sorry. And it's been really hard reliving some parts of this. But anyway, it was so black and so awful that the boys left. And when my mum came in, she said I was on the windowsill of the flat. Now, the papers have picked that up before and said I was trying to jump out and end my life. I wasn't. I don't remember what took me there. I just remember wanting to escape from whatever was going on in my head. Anyway, the guys came back from golf and the medics were around my bed. And it was the start of my descent into hell, basically. And this book is not about postnatal depression, it's about depression, because although my depressive illness started as a result of having a baby, however your depression starts in life, whether you have it from childhood or through, all feels the same when it happens. Depression depresses everything. It's not about being happy. A lot of things I see about depression, it will say, trying to be happy, or if you feel sad for a long period of time, you should maybe do this. All the depressive wants to do is to be able to feel happy, to be able to feel sad, because they are normal reactions to a set of circumstances. But what depression does is exactly what it says on the tin. It depresses every single emotion. So you can't feel happiness, sadness, joy, love, anger, jealousy, rage, nothing. And the analogy I used to use is that if someone knocked on my door and said, you have just got that film that you have always wanted, or they said your whole family have been wiped out in an aircraft disaster, it would be like that. That's what depression does. So postnatal depression, when you suddenly have this baby who is 100% dependent on you, and you can't love that child, it is the most horrific thing that anybody can go through. And had I not had the family that I had and that I have, except my beloved late mum, sorry, honestly, how embarrassing. I just wish my mum could have lived to see my life as it is now. I'm really sorry, everybody. I don't know, something about just sort of talking it out is making me quite emotional. But anyway, that's why I wrote the book. So this is how my depression started. And I was a very lone voice. Thank you so much to honestly, thank you. I'm really embarrassed about this. So that's how my depression started. And most people, if anybody is watching who is pregnant, who loves someone who's pregnant or has just had a baby, if they get postnatal depression, most people will make a complete recovery from it. Let me just say that now. I was unfortunate, and it opened up a tendency to clinical depression from a severe hormonal imbalance. That's another story. It took me 20 years to get anyone to believe that the origin might have been hormonal. I mean, God forbid that would be hormonal, that you've actually given birth to a human being that comes out your foo-foo, but never mind. Sorry, my loose women-esque talk there. But this was the start of it. Now, I went to a doctor. My mum took me to the doctor. And I had never met this doctor before. I'd never really needed to see a doctor in London, this particular doctor. And I was almost catatonic. So the depressive person will know that why it's so isolating is that you can't talk, you can't function, you don't want to be around anybody. Every little bit of joy is gone from your life. And my mum took me to the doctor, and the doctor leaned forward and said to me, she was a woman probably about my age now, and she leaned forward and she looked me straight in the eyes, and bearing in mind I'm like this in a chair, and she said to me, well, the thing is, she said, I had 5 children, dear, and I just didn't have time to get depressed. That's what she said to me, and that's what I was up against a lot of the time. There was nobody in my position, a woman on the television, who has now gone on to have 2 children, who is moderately successful, who lives incredibly great, happy times in between the episodes. I would have given my limbs to have somebody say, hey, you, woman in a dressing gown who's begging your mother to find an injection to make everything go away, because that's what I used to say to my mum and to Tim and everybody. They were all marvellous, but that's what I wanted. And for that person to say, you will get better. I promise you, you will get better. Hang on in there, and this unwelcome visitor will leave. I'll go on to why I call it that in a bit. But there was nobody. My mum and dad, Tim was working 2 jobs, bless him, and he was all over the country, and oh my goodness. But my mum and dad and my husband and my sister and the people who loved me, they never once for one moment doubted that what I had was a serious illness. But as the years have gone by, what you have to understand about people who are depressed is that as well as having this crippling, isolating, often terminal illness, we have to prove to people that we have it. So an example being is that nobody watching this would ever go up to someone in a bed who has got a severe physical illness, dare I say cancer, something so horrendous, go up to them and say, well, you've had this a month now. I mean, you look all right to me. You look fine. Do you know what you should do is you should get yourself out of bed, get your trainers on, and we'll go for a nice walk. I mean, that is incomprehensible that anybody would say that to someone with a physical illness, but that's what we are up against all the time. Obviously, there has been huge advances in the way we treat depression, in the way we talk about depression, in the way we relate to people with depression. But judging by the reaction to my book and judging by the reaction to the interviews, of which I've been so lucky to have so many this week and get so many people be behind this topic, I am amazed and blindsided by how, after 30 years of talking about this, even when I was a lone voice in the wilderness, and people said to me, not my family, but people said to me in the industry, I had an agent who was about 110, and he was going, oh, darling, you mustn't talk about this. People will think you're mad, you'll never work. And you know, I remember thinking, as maybe after about a year, when I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, I could see periods of wellness, and I would have a few good days followed by bad days, and then more bad days, but some good days. And we moved house during it, and change is a big catalyst with the depressive. Depressed people don't like change, even if it's good change. It was a very crazy time. But I just thought, I can't have another person, male or female, go through this without me at least trying to help. And if people don't want to employ me because I have a mental illness, then I don't want to work for them. So people say to me, have you lost work because of your illness? I don't know. I would imagine so. I would imagine if there was two actors who were both well equipped to do the job, and the director or producer had maybe read that I had a mental illness, maybe they'd go, do you know something, we'll err on the side of caution and go for the other one. I don't know. But I've had a wonderful career, and I don't regret, well, I do regret things, but I don't regret ever speaking out about it. So it's been a long road, and along that road, I unfortunately resorted to self-medicating, which started pretty much when I was in probably Coronation Street, which was, 24 years ago I started that, 24 years ago. And it was, I was in my late 30s, and Matty was about, I don't know, 8, something, 7, 8. And, you know, a soap opera is, it's a very full-on job, and you're working 14 hours a day. And, you know, I'm not going, oh, boo-hoo, poor me. Loads of people work 14 hours a day. That's not the point. But I was juggling too many balls. I'd moved my family down from the north, and they weren't settled yet in the northwest. And basically what I was doing was I would talk the talk and not walk the walk. So I would say to people, you've got to be open about your depression. If you've got a mental illness or you've got anxiety, you've got to talk about it. But inside, I was dying, and I wasn't telling anybody how I was feeling. So I started to drink more. Don't get me wrong, I'd always liked to drink. I'm from a party background. My mum and dad liked to drink. My dad still does at 83. He's still party central. He can't wait for the pubs to open. Nothing's stopping him Saturday, believe you me. He'll be climbing through the window. But so I always liked to party. You know, so I was somebody who'd get drunk on a Saturday or get a bit pissed with my mates, and, you know, that sort of drinker, but nothing serious, nothing that was a problem. And slowly but surely, the only way I could have temporary reprieve from the pain of my depression was drinking, and at one time drugs. Somebody offered me some drugs once and said, bearing in mind I was in my late 30s, so if drugs had been something that I thought was really cool to try, we've all been young, they were around. I had zero interest in drugs just to party. Didn't want them, not interested, turned them down. People, fill your boots if you want to, not interested. So there are no excuses for what my life became, but there were reasons. And the reason why I took cocaine when I did was because someone told me that this drug would elevate your mood. And that's why I took it. And it did. And it did, temporarily. But then you start to go down. And the come down is so terrifying for someone like me, because I was thinking, oh my God, I'm starting to feel worse. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And that's how the vicious circle starts. And that's how it started. And I was on a treadmill to disaster. And basically it was the beginning of the end of many wonderful times in my life were ruined because of self-medicating. I mean, I have brought up 2 children. There's a 12-year gap between Matty and Louis. Matty's 31 now, Louis's 19. And the reason there's a 12-year gap is because I didn't plan to have any more children. I wanted to, but I was too terrified. And Tim didn't want me to. Because we were older, but partly because he didn't want to, as he said, he didn't want to lose his wife again. And because that's how he felt that he'd married this woman. We hadn't been together that long when I got pregnant. So he felt that he'd married this crazy, wacky, fun, loving, happy-go-lucky person, and ended up with this woman in a dressing gown for a long time. And it was a very hard time, but we got through it, and we eventually did have another child. But the irony being is that my depression is endogenous most of the time. So there's endogenous depression and reactive depression. Reactive depression, exactly what it says on the tin. You are reacting to a set of circumstances. Your thoughts can bring on a depression. A global pandemic and anxiety can bring on a depression. The death of a parent, a spouse, God forbid, a child, anything horrific can bring on your depression. And yes, there are triggers that do that with me. But in the main, mine is endogenous, which means that, so the episode that spawned this book was last September. And this is an example of how my depression is endogenous. So I am driving up to the northeast from the northwest with my friend Lisa and her 2 kids, Pixie and Bella, and they are Matty's godchildren. And we were dead excited about driving up one weekend to see my sister in Headley near Newcastle. And that's all that was on my mind. The kids love their godfather's music. My son's in a band, the 1975, who are very successful and very brilliant, but then again, I am the mother. And we were driving up and the kids were singing the songs in the back, and it was like, oh my God, shut up. Anyway, this is all I was thinking about. And we got up north, looking forward to this weekend, and we got to the Angel of the North. And how I describe it is that suddenly, in the midst of laughing with the kids and talking to Lisa and thinking of nothing other than that, the colour goes out of my life. The colour drains from my life and everything becomes grey. And I get often, not always, but often, I get a tingling in my palms and a metallic taste in my mouth. And I know what's happening. And every little bit of joy, the joy of going to my sister's, the joy of being in the car with Matty's godchildren, and the fun of the weekend we're going to have is gone. And all I want to do is be on my own. And that's the unwelcome visitor. That's the creep who enters my life uninvited, whether I'm in a car, my house, my bedroom, a hotel, backstage at a theatre just before I'm going to go on stage, and says to me, I'm here. He tries to ruin my life, but I will no longer let him. People have asked me why the gender is a he. I don't know. I think it's just historically the bogeyman. And I used to call him my thing. In fact, I still do. If my family ever call me and say, oh, Lincoln has told us that you're not well, and I go, I've got my thing, and everybody knows what that is. And these days, I am much, much, much kinder to myself than I was. And although the show must go on is kind of inbuilt into any performer's DNA, I've realized that actually, if I'm too bad, the show will have to go on without me. But you think it won't, and actually it does. You know, I mean, these days in some of the soap operas, if people lose an eyelash, they call in sick, but not that I want to gossip. Anyway, it's 8:30, and I've seen so many messages come up here, but the book is not an autobiography. Obviously, it has autobiographical moments in it because it's about me, but it's basically a chronicle of my depression, how I survive it, and how you can survive it by cherishing the times in between these episodes. And I call us a tribe because historically, people who had depression were considered quite weak. And actually, if we can survive this and get through it and live a wonderful life in between his visits, we are the strongest tribe alive, and we are stronger together. And that is coming over by the people who've read my book. And the book is, I hope, about depression, but not depressing. I hope, people have said that there's humour in it. There is a chapter at the end that's very important to me, and it's the friends and family chapter, because a very underrepresented group of people are the people who live with people with depression, people who love people with depression, because it's so hard. And I've said before, and I'll be quite honest, I don't know how I would have been if the shoe had been on the other foot, because although Tim and I are divorced, we have 2 wonderful children, we're still friends, and he was amazing with my depression, and Lincoln is my hero. And 8 years ago, with Lincoln's support, we got sober together. And I think when I get emotional talking about my mum is because my mum lived for 3 weeks after I'd given up drinking, and she worried so much that I would have loved my mum to have seen this part of my life, because I can tell you that my life at 62 is so much richer than it was at 52 and 42. And giving up alcohol doesn't cure depression, but it stops it making it worse, and it stops compounding it. And that is and that is kind of my story to now. And I wish I could. I can't wait to be able to read. Yeah, I know. But I know, Philippa, the doctor, look, you can see me ring light here in the thing. But listen, I've exhausted myself. I'm going to have to put my fan on a minute here. My God, I can talk. That's been a Geordie for you. But I hope that I've given you a sort of an overview of my life and why I wrote the book. So, oh yes, that's right. So basically, last September, when I told you about the episode where I was in the car going to my sister's, when I woke up in the morning at my sister's, I had a shower, which is hard because having a shower is so hard. Getting out of bed, doing anything is hard. But I didn't want at this point to ruin people's weekend. I know it wouldn't because they love me, but you still feel a pressure. Even with a physical illness, if you had, you'd feel a pressure to try and go to the swing park or the trampoline park or wherever it is with the kids, because my sister, wonderful sister Debbie, fosters 3 children. She's just actually been nominated for a fostering award as well, so I'm incredibly proud of her. But I woke up in the morning and impulsively I picked up my phone and I chronicled a 3-day episode of depression in real time. I spoke to the camera and I said, I am now currently going through an episode of depression. And for those people who've asked me what it's like, I'm going to show you. And I did it over 3 days. And when I was well, because I had to take a few days off work, when I was well and I look back at this, I was overwhelmed. 1.5 million people had watched this video. Now, the reason I was so surprised was because I talked about this condition for 30 years, but I'd always talked about it when I was well, or I'd always talked about it as people do, as, you know, when I have my depression, but I had it. And it seemed to impact on people a lot. And that's how the book was spawned, because they came to me, the Hodder and Stoughton, the wonderful publishers, and there was 3 publishers came to us, and we went with Hodder and Stoughton because I really felt like they heard my voice, and I knew there was people there in the team that had had experience of this either personally or with people that they loved, and I knew I was in safe hands, and so we went with them, and they've been amazing. And Emma Knight, my publicist, and Bryony Gordon, and my agent at Curtis Brown, Gordon Brown, and Rebecca Cripps, who helps me with the book, and these people have been so part of my story. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what the book's about. It's probably not worth buying it now because I've told you everything. There's lots more in it. But listen, please, Ask me any questions if you would like to. These are the most lovely comments, and every single one means so much to me. And I would imagine that some people who are watching and listening probably have depression, or indeed people with bits must be taken seriously. Mary Sula is saying depression for the sufferer is horrendous. You see, I can often tell by the tone of messages whether people are just commenting or whether they really know. And wonderful honesty. Thank you so much, Amanda. I just think it's very important, because I think we've hidden this illness for so long. I mean, years and years ago, as far as the philosophers and Homer, I mean, it was called melancholia. I mean, I can't imagine having such a horrendous illness as this in any other century but now. So although we have still got a long way to go, we are talking about it more. Jane Lodwick, are you on medication all the time? I am, Jane. I'm on Cymbalta, which is the brand name for dulcoloxetine or something. I've been on every single one. And I am a huge advocate of antidepressants when they are prescribed correctly. Like my mum used to say, thank you, Janice, if you had bronchitis, you would take an antibiotic, unless you were absolutely against orthodox medicine. I'm not. So my mum used to say, if you had chronic bronchitis, which I do get, you would take an antibiotic and you wouldn't think anything of it. But everybody who was on antidepressants, it would be like, oh, I don't want to take them. And I think there is this image that is conjured up of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Nurse Ratched coming and handing out these pills, and that you all put a white dressing gown and shuffle around. It's not like that. Tranquilizers are very different. There is a time and a place for tranquilizers. I've never been tranquilized. I've never done diazepam, never done Valium, never done Xanax, never done them. Mine is an antidepressant, which is replacing the missing chemical serotonin. Depression is a condition of the brain. And one of the things that came out with, thank you, Sue. One of the things that came out of the responses to my videos last year was that people said on social media, they went, oh my God, thank you so much for explaining my depression. They said, everybody always says to me, what do you think brought it on? You must have done something to bring it on. And we don't. Sometimes there are triggers, and obviously the fear of the fear, once you've had something before, like for example, I took a 12, 13 year break from theatre, from live theatre. God, I wish it would come back now. It worries me so much. That's the days I get sadness and tearful, is about the theatres and my friends losing their careers. Was it difficult to... Thank you, you saw the videos, and Lingham's are asking me, was it difficult, and revisiting some of the experiences. It was, and I'll go on to that in just 1 second. But it was the fact that people are sick of being asked, what do you think's brought it on? Just like an episode of anything. You know, just like diabetics, people wouldn't say, what do you think's brought your hypo on? Or, well, maybe they would. I'm not very clued up on diabetes, but you know the point I'm making. Now, Lingham's are asking me if it was difficult to write. I'll be perfectly honest with you. When Hodder first came to me and asked me, and I had the meeting with them, I didn't know if I wanted to do this, because I didn't know if it would be triggering. And I didn't know if I wanted to revisit some of the dark places that it took me to. And you saw I got emotional about some things, but I can deal with being emotional and sensitive about those, because they bring up sort of, you know, memories of my mom, and memories of not being able to love Matty, who of course, my children are my life. And so I worried about it, but I decided to do it. And once I started the creative process of this book, and once I started writing, I realized that what I was doing was, I was writing the book that I needed when I was poorly, that I'd never been able to find. And that just opened the floodgates, and it all came out. So was it cathartic? Yes, indeed it was. What piece of advice would you give to somebody having a depressive episode? Well, what I would say is, just remember that your unwelcome visitor, or whatever you want to call it, will always leave. Be kind to yourself. if you need to cancel something, cancel it. I know we all have commitments, and most of us are people that don't want to let people down. But if you had something wrong with your kidneys, if you suddenly had a kidney stone, if you suddenly had a heart problem, if you suddenly had severe gastroenteritis, you would have to ring up and say that you weren't well. Do it. But what more companies have got to do is they've got to stop saying, we're very open to mental illness, we're very open to you talking about it, but then they are worried when people ring in with a mental illness. Do you know that 99% of people off with mental health problems don't get a get well card? And all I'm striving for is there to be a parity between how mental illness is perceived and how physical illness is perceived. So I would say, be kind to yourself. And if you are surrounded by people who don't understand your illness, I can't tell you the heartbreaking stories I've heard in the last few weeks about people saying, you know, their husband says, oh God, not this again. Well, my first book was called Pulling Myself Together. That old chestnut, you know. And you've just got to get more exercise. Exercise when you're well is great, and it's important, and it is good at trying to keep the visitor at bay. But once the visitor is there, getting out of bed is a challenge. But don't feel any guilt about it. This is not something that we can help. It's not an indulgence. It's an illness. And if your doctor doesn't understand, go to another doctor. Also, what I didn't have then is I didn't have any social media, any books about it, anybody on television or radio talking about it. It was just horrendous. But now at the click of Google, even though there is a tsunami of mental health problems, you know, obviously I wrote the book before lockdown as a result of what's happened. Anxious people who were anxious in lockdown, people who are now anxious coming out of lockdown because they found a solace in lockdown. And of course, the mental health services that have always been underfunded are now, it doesn't bear thinking about. But at the click of a Google button, you can find Depressives Anonymous. Just put help for depression. How do I find help for depression? You will find a community or a group or some people who care. Mind organization are fantastic. And I'm going to start coming onto this page more regularly, and I will try to give you all these kind of informations, and hopefully the people organizing tonight can get places of support to you, which kind of bridge the gap until you can get, you know, professional help. But in my opinion, talking therapy is amazing. When you're lucid, it doesn't help me when I'm in depression because I can't talk, I can't speak. It's very hard. Thank goodness. Ellen says, my husband groans. Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, to be perfectly honest, Ellen, I'm sure that my husband does, but he just tries not to show it. Thank goodness times are changing for the better. How have you coped with lockdown, says Tina. Well, this is the irony of the whole situation, that many people who haven't experienced mental health problems have, because of the whole thing. I haven't had an episode, touch wood, in lockdown, but that is luck rather than management. That is because, you know, 2 years ago, sitting on a beach in January in Grenada in the Caribbean with my beloved husband and the waves lapping at my feet and palm trees and waiters bringing you, in my case, a virgin cocktail. And I was eating an apple pie and the colour started to go from my life. And I'm in the Caribbean on a beach with nothing, no worries except what I'm going to have for dinner at the fish restaurant in the evening. So I've been lucky that I haven't had it in lockdown. So I've been able to try and help others, and it's also made it easier for my family because it's always hard for them when I get poorly. And especially, you know, I'm really grateful that I haven't had it because it would have been an added pressure on my family and people who love me who've been dealing with their own shit, to be perfectly honest. That's great, Philippa, if you can share this, because anybody that gets anything out of me talking about it, if I help one person, then I feel I've done my job. And I think because I've talked about it for so long, and okay, so I'll into the last. I think because I've talked about it so long, I've developed a vocabulary and a way of relaying it in kind of normal speak, because people like Stephen Fry and Ruby Wax, who have done marvels for talking out and writing about mental health problems. I mean, Ruby Wax did in Oxford University. She's got a degree in mindfulness. But there are a lot of people in my tribe who I would say, you know, normal people who maybe didn't go to university like myself, who find it difficult to relate to Oxbridge educated people like Ruby and Stephen because they maybe don't talk the same language. So I think I'm just a bit more common, basically. And I think I just kind of, I speak from the heart and I don't intellectualize it. I've been asked by Sarah Walters, how long do these episodes last? It varies, Sarah. I would say if I had to average them, 3 or 4 days. And just as the horror comes on, when the visitor leaves, I can metaphorically sense him walking towards the door, in that I will get little moments of betterness. And I don't say anything to Lincoln usually until he's completely gone, because it's almost like I don't want to build his hopes up, because when you're the partner of someone with depression, they'll come in the front door and they go, thank you, Mary. And they go, you're right, in the hope that they'll see this person that goes, he's gone. And you can kind of see that they're trying to hide that they're crushed when they just get this kind of monosyllabic person. I mean, I'm so lucky that, you know, that I've got the people around me that I have. And, but usually by about the 4th day, I can feel it lifting. There has been longer periods. 3 years ago, I was doing a play at Bolton Octagon. And that's a pressure, you know, because I was playing the lead in the play. Now, for those of you who know the theatre, if you're doing a West End production or if you're doing a big commercial tour like I did, Calendar Girls the Musical a couple of years ago, you are lucky enough to have an understudy. And but you still don't really want that understudy to go on, partly because they might be better than you, but because there is the show must go on aspect. But you know that you have an understudy. Having an episode on stage is the most terrifying thing I've ever been through in my life, I have to say. It was pretty horrendous. And because I knew that I was doing this play and I was in rehearsals, and I knew that the play was going on and my depression wasn't lifting, and I opened on the opening night with my visitor beside me, and it was just, oh my God, I don't know how I got through it. It's like the words are tumbling out my mouth. I should have pulled out of it, but I didn't. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for the amazingly supportive comments that I'm getting on here, and it's kind of time for me to kind of go. Matthew Griffiths, you made me laugh with your June Whitfield comparisons. I know, because I used to look in the mirror and think, oh, I think I'm looking a bit Sharon Stone, and then people would go, no, you look like June Whitfield. And I do. Oh my God, what a brilliant actress June Whitfield was. If you look at pictures of June Whitfield, I'm the double of June Whitfield. I look now like Sharon Stone, except I've got short blonde hair. But thank you so much to everybody who has watched and listened tonight, and for your amazing comments. I hope you read the book. I hope you enjoy the book. And I say that, enjoy the book. It's from my heart, and I hope it helps. And if you know anybody that is struggling or has this, please give them a copy of the book. I've done some bad things in my life and some good things, but I am so proud of this book and what it's meaning to people. And I don't often pat myself on the shoulder, but I'm proud of the effect that it's having on people. And I want this to be my legacy. And I want, when I'm gone and 6 foot under, this to be a book that people may hand down and keep by their bed and think, I'm feeling a certain way, but I remember in chapter 3 or page 4 or paragraph, whatever, that this is what Denise had, and it's okay to have this because we're poorly like anybody else, but we're survivors, and the unwelcome visitor will always leave. And I want you all to remember that. And I'm so grateful, and I hope that I get the chance to meet some of you, and I hope I get the chance to visit the bookstores. And I'm also going to be talking about doing a few Instagram lives with some people who have got stories to tell, and if the book has impacted on them. And so we're going to be organising that in the near future. So I just want to say thank you so much. and I'm amazed that I've actually worked this on my own and that my phone hasn't run out of charge, and bravo to me. But anyway, thank you so much, everybody. Lots of love. Bye.